All right, welcome back to Problem Solver Politics. I'm your host, Cardinellis, with Cody the Oracle.
Hey, everyone.
And today we got to talk a lot of polling data. Those internet polls have come back in, some of them more formal than others, but all of them show that it looks like the Bernie bros are getting beat up by the Yang gang, and it's really, really fun to watch and actually indicative of what we think is going to be a voter and sociological trend. And believe it or not, we've got at least anecdotal and some internet poll data to support it. So, Cody, get us started. What's going on?
All right. Well, the other day we were talking about this. Here's another kind of further look at it. I have it on the stream right now. For whatever reason, the Yang gang has just dominated Twitter. When it comes to these Twitter polls, this is the first one I want to show you. This was by Trump Warrior 45. Clearly, you could tell his audience, right? Andrew Yang, in a 75,000 vote poll, it's a lot of votes, won by 8%, right? So that's pretty, I would say, significant in a way that is as significant as an unofficial Twitter poll could be. Now, this is where things get a little bit funny. Now, I'm not trying to say this to be rude or disrespectful, but New York for Bernie Sanders is another Twitter account. They did a poll themselves saying, which of these two candidates are you voting for president in the 2020 Democratic primary? Retweet and spread the word. They have Bernie Sanders and Andrew Yang. As you can see, the Yang gang, again, showed up in force and ran away with it. Well, New York for Bernie Sanders actually had to delete that poll because according to them, and to be fair, I'm not gonna put words in their mouth. According to them, they said that there was a lot of bots that were voting. Andrew Yang supporters are frequently accused of being bots, so it's not really anything new.
Okay. They're just so slick and smooth that people think it's got to be automated, right? There's no way we got beaten that badly.
There's just so many.
This is why we need those scientific polls that prove that Bernie Sanders is winning, because those internet polls, no, they don't make sense. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is our president.
Yeah. Well, actually, you know what? If you want to give me 1 second, I'll show up. So, anyway, the takeaway from this, and again, this isn't to be rude to say anything about New York for Bernie Sanders. Whatever they did. I don't really mind. Maybe there was bots. We don't know. Maybe they saw something we didn't. Point being, though, is Andrew Yang and the Yang gang, they come out in force on the internet every single time. Every time there's anything that he's up there with, they come out in force and make they make their voice heard, So I thought that was funny to highlight. And again, it's just really humorous to me that they start the poll and then Andrew Yang runs away with the poll, so they have to delete it because they're like, oh, this doesn't look good for Bernie Sanders if he's a 28 point likelihood of winning that election. So I thought that was funny. But like I said, my takeaway is this individual incident is just humorous, but the idea that there is this, we talk about it all the time, the legit grassroots energy for Andrew Yang, and this is what it looks like.
Yeah, and all I got to say is this. I'm going to totally date myself here, but who here has seen the movie Clueless?
Oh, it's a great film.
All right, yeah.
It's a really good movie.
Yeah, great film, but there's this hilarious moment in which Alicia Silverstone's character comes home and tells her daddy, oh, I got C's, but I talked to the professors and I got all A's. And then the father, who's a lawyer, and they're obviously trying to poke fun at lawyers as being, dishonest people, said, what was his infamous line, Cody? Do you remember or no? He says,
I'm just keeping it real.
Oh, no. He says, I'm so proud of you, honey. I'm more proud of you than if you would have gotten A's in the first place. He was so proud that she had negotiated an A instead of having actually earned an A, because that's what lawyers do, is they negotiate, right? Or litigate, shall we say. So anyway, I'm thinking one of two things. First, which I believe is most likely, let's use Occam's razor here. I really doubt people have so much time that they're out there creating these bots. And the left, whenever they lose, always want to blame Russian bots, Yang bots. Bots is the new excuse behind, that's a Republican talking point that the left has, okay? So I doubt it was bots. I actually just think there's more enthusiasm from the Yang gang than from the Bernie bros, and they lost and they don't like it, so they're going to blame the bots. At best. Okay. However, just like Alicia Silverstone's dad, let's just say it were bots. All right. And the Yang gang was out there straight up coding bots that were taking Twitter polls just to make the other candidates look bad. Let me tell you, just like her father, I would be just as proud of the Yang gang. I would be just as, maybe even more proud of the Yang gang if they'd actually designed a bunch of bots to destroy the Bernie bros' own poll. I think it's hilarious that that Andrew Yang, and it does have to say something, that Andrew Yang is actually beating these candidates in these informal, easily accessible online polls that are being hosted by other people. He's beating them on their home turf. And a lot of people say, oh yeah, well, internet polls. I don't even know why I've gotten 1 minute into this video because we're talking about internet polls. Well, guys, you look at some of these scientific polls, okay? All scientific poll means is that there's certain parameters within which they are operating so that supposedly the answers are more trustworthy. But if you actually dig into the data, because they have to disclose all the data of who they called, what time they called, the average age group of the people that they called, the registration status of the people they called, the voter history of the people they called, so on and so forth, okay? When you dig into the data and the numbers, some of these polls only have as little as 1,004 people, okay? And some of them have only interviewed 25, 35, 45, 55 people below the age of 50, below the age of 45. I mean, they're interviewing over 90% old boomers, not even young boomers like our parents. We're talking old boomers at the top of the bell curve in these landline polls.
Well, I have a pretty interesting article really quickly, so I'm going to go over some data with you just for a minute.
Yeah, bust it out. Go for it.
This I thought was really fascinating. Now, we're going to go way back to the mythical year of 2016.
Well, isn't this its own video?
Well, no, because this is a good point I want to point to you, as you were just bringing up.
Okay.
Now, they go on in this article by 538.com. Quickly, you guys can see that, 538. And what they talk about, they say that they take a look at the difference between what they call traditional polls, where live interviewers, someone actually calls and asks you questions, and what they call non-traditional polls, which would be either robopolls or online panels. This is what I thought was very interesting. When looking at Hillary Clinton, who we know at this point was a front runner but did go on to lose. I just love these odds, by the way. It just shows it's such a time capsule. Anyway, though, they say when using live, which is traditional old school polling methods, her chance of winning was 86%. When they went to non-live, or they went online, and they went to some other non-traditional methods, it goes to 70.5. It drops 16 points. Now, again, it's kind of humorous to think that it's like, oh, Hillary's going to be all the way down to 70%, and she actually lost. But still, it's which one of those is closer to reality? You know what I mean? And as you were saying, man, like who they call for the live polls and who actually shows up for non-live polls, using the last presidential election, the less traditional polling data seemed to be right. In this one instance, it's anecdotal evidence.
And the reason why is because look at who they're polling. These scientific polls developed their methodologies in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, back when landlines were all you could call. And so what happens is you're going to get people who were born in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. You're going to be getting nothing but Gen Xers, baby boomers, and those of the silent generation that are still alive, okay? Whereas these Twitter polls are a lot more indicative of what the Twitter generation is thinking. And now millennials, okay, which I dare say are the Twitter generation, okay? I remember when Twitter was invented. I know one of the first investors in Twitter personally, okay? They're not answering landlines. And now millennials are the largest voting bloc. It used to be baby boomers were the largest voting bloc. And since they have such a higher voting ratio than all of the other generations, then the data was a lot more predictable of success or failure. But now, just by sheer birth rates, okay, we're having Gen Z people registering to vote that have never seen a landline. You watch the YouTube videos of them trying to operate a rotary phone, and it's like watching, the Neanderthals in 2001: A Space Odyssey not know what to do with the cube that fell out of the sky, okay?
Obelisk.
So the obelisk that fell out of the sky, okay? So I'm looking at this, and I think this needs to be taken seriously. Look into the methodologies of these polls that the DNC is requiring for people to qualify. And you'll notice they are interviewing less than 50 people below the age of 50 out of 1,000. So no wonder Andrew Yang is polling at 2%, because the old people aren't tuning in until the week of the election, or maybe just only during the debates. They're not forming their opinions until the mailers come out, okay, and they actually read them. Whereas the internet candidates of the much younger generation, which is now the largest voting bloc, are crushing it on Twitter polls to such a degree that the Trump people putting out a poll get beat. The Bernie people that put out a Twitter poll get beat. This seriously is shedding light into the inefficacy of the establishment polling and the establishment party system, as well as shining a light onto the importance of social media and even programs like this. Okay, Cody, am I going wrong?
No, I mean, this is just the one thing that, because how do I put this best way? I'm still at that point, admittedly. Really, like a lot of the points you were saying are very good against why some of the more traditional polling things are just kind of falling out of date. Eventually, everything's out of date, you know? I mean, look at a iPhone 3 and look at how quaint and goofy is this thing, right? And that was once the highest tech. I just don't know if there's, because online polls can be manipulated. Full disclosure, like I said, the Bernie supporter or the Bernie supporting account who went on to delete their
Wait, can be manipulated. I'm going to stop you for a second. Can be manipulated is another way of saying fallible. But doesn't 2016 prove that all the scientific polls are just as fallible? Because the scientific polls were saying Trump wasn't going to win. At the same time, the internet polls were saying he's going to win.
I wouldn't say just as fallible. I mean, I would say it is. I mean,
you're sounding really boomer, bro.
But we've brought this up before, and again, I don't want to get too far into. People have done things like, I think it was Doritos had like a name the new flavor contest, and they had to shut the contest down because everyone that kept winning, they obviously could not run. I think it was some chip company. I think Mountain Dew, same thing. Mountain Dew, name our new flavor, and it was just a series of racial slurs and of things like, we can't use any of these. So I'm saying is, people have a way of rigging these online polls. Now, obviously, I would assume the next Dorito poll would be less secure than who do you want to vote for president. But still, I'm just saying I don't think there's a perfect answer right now. It is tough. And I think I understand
there is a perfect
impulse.
answer for one person, though.
Well, yeah, but I understand the impulse to just say, you know what we have isn't perfect, but it's working enough. We're afraid of what could happen. I'm not saying it's a good response, but I understand it. I can see why they're just saying, look, we use these polls. They're probably not perfect, but hey, we get results we're happy with and we can live with, so we're going to stay with it.
Look,
that's what I think.
All I can say is, how old is Tom Perez of the DNC right now?
Oh,
he was born in 1967, all right? He's literally 3 years before the cutoff of baby boomers. Some people say it ended in 1964. Some people say in 1960. So he's at best a young boomer, okay? An old Gen Xer.
At best a young boomer.
Yeah, at best a young boomer, at worst an old Gen Xer. If I were Tom Perez and I wanted to make sure that my establishment cronies that I had rubbed shoulders with for 20 years as I worked my way up through Democrat politics, by rubbing shoulders also with the the mainstream media outlet of my party. I mean, the mainstream media of our country. I would want to make sure that I would get those establishment cronies in office. So how am I going to make sure that the boomer establishment crony gets in office? I'm going to make rules that require approved scientific polls whose methodologies poll who? The young bucks that I'm detached from, whom I do not really particularly care about providing a future for or a freedom dividend. No, I'm going to use the scientific trusted polls that only call landlines that only boomers answer, because I know they're going to read my mailer, wink, wink, and they're going to vote for the person that I tell them is the best choice. That's just plain old the way it is. If you look at somebody's voting habits, if you can get them to vote for the same party 3 times in a row, from the first time they vote when they turn 18 to the next 3 elections, if you can get them to vote party line 3 times in a row, there's an over 90% chance that they will vote for that party and those candidates in every single election of their lives. It's called the myth of the rational voter. This is straight science. So we all know where I stand on this, okay? I think Andrew Yang is wildly more popular due to the enthusiasm and the efforts of the Yang gang than the corrupt DNC gives him credit for. Okay? And this is a perfect example of, yes, something that cannot prove that these other polls are crappy, but there's far too much anecdotal data and far too much precedent with Donald Trump's election of internet polls being right and scientific polls being wrong for us not to take these Twitter polls seriously. We cannot establish a trend with one election of Donald Trump where the online polls were right and the scientific polls were wrong. But let me tell you, I could see 2020 being the second, and it takes 3 to establish a pattern. We're idiots if we don't start believing it by 2020. Anyway, let us know what you guys think. Do these online polls actually carry weight? How much weight in your mind? Do they have flaws? If so, what are those flaws in comparison to the flaws of the approved scientific polls? If you'd like to contribute to our channel, there's a PayPal link in the description. And also, if you guys want to opine, make sure you hook up with us in the Discord chat. Send us your memes, send us your video instructions or suggestions. This is Problem Solver Politics.